I went into this episode saying I would give it props with the story about meeting Adrien's grandparents focused on Adrien. Clearly, I'm delusional. How could I forget that this is the Marinette show? I mean, he was there, and even displayed emotions and opinions vaguely regarding his own interests. I guess that's a step up from previous episodes. We even get to see him grieve Gabe for like 30 seconds. Adrien fans are truly feasting. It's been so long since they had such a bountiful harvest. I mean, the last time he had this much agency, he was relinquishing his ability to be involved in the defeat of the villain he'd been fighting for 5 seasons and his father's death. I said in a previous review that I didn't have it in me to muster up any emotion about Chat Noir being demoted in the superhero team. And that hasn't changed. If there's one thing the show's good at, it's making me not care about things I used to care about. But as it turns out, I still have emotions to burn with Adrien. And here's my conspiracy theory. The writers don't want to write about Adrien. Okay, I know, hardly the hottest take in this fandom, but have you ever seen a story avoid the most important character as hard as this episode did? And you're not allowed to bring up an episode of this exact same show as an example, that's cheating. Now, maybe they're saving writing about him for later in the season, but when I was done with this episode, the only character who felt like they had less priority were the gorilla and his maternal grandmother. The general gist of this episode is that Adrien is finally going to meet his grandparents. His mother's parents, comprising of a misogynistic, elitist, controlling asshole and his long-suffering wife, refused to visit their family while she was alive. And his father wanted nothing to do with his own parents, who are hippies. So this is the first time he's meeting all of them, and he's nervous. Predictably, Marinette comes along. This was my genuine reaction to Sabine saying Adrien is Marinette's first relationship. Someone go check on the Lucanet shippers. You know, I have harped on the fact Marinette was written to insert herself into Adrien's meeting with his grandparents since I first read the episode summary, but I want to make it clear that that's a critique aimed solely at the writers. For Marinette herself, it's clearly just a case of providing emotional support to her boyfriend in meeting grandparents he's never met. It's arguably the first normal thing she's done as his girlfriend this season. The dress looks cute. I don't know the big thing Thomas is building up to with Adrien's design not changing considering how liberal they're being with Marinette, but if it's with the same energy as his insistence that the season isn't airing out of order, I'm not holding my breath. And to that effect, I'm not even sure if this is the first normal thing. Who knows, maybe there's something in Daddy Cup or Climatic Queen. The point is, Adrien gets to meet his grandparents. I can't wait to see what he thinks about them. In fact, I'm so excited, I'm gonna show it to you right now. Hopefully, I can avoid copyright.
É uma honra recebê-lo.
Oi, avô. Oi, avô.
E acabaram de chegar os seus avós. Pegue.
Well, that was fun. Oh, you want more? So do I. The writers pulled out every trick to keep Adrien out of the episode. Because it isn't about him. Yes, it's about who gets to take care of him, but it's not about him. It's secretly about his grandparents. This episode has a bunch of flashbacks that serve to show us his childhood, which isn't nothing, but only functions to deepen his relationship with Natalie in order to explain why he's staying with her. The thing about flashbacks is that they serve to contextualize why characters are doing what they're doing. But in relation to this episode, Adrien isn't doing anything, so all this backstory does is give us a glimpse of his dead mom and the beginning of Gabriel's spiral into madness, as well as solidifying his relationship with Natalie. A relationship that isn't even strong enough for him to say he wants to stay with her without being told to do so. And you wanna know what drives me to say this? Plague. Plague's the reason Adrien is barely a presence in this episode. Because he got distracted by a snack and flew away, and Adrien spends the entire time worrying about where he went instead of just talking to his grandparents. We don't see his reaction to his elitist grandpa deriding his family because he's too busy wondering where the Avatar of Destruction has gone off to. It's almost impressive. Not in construction, but just the balls to actually do this. I actually think this is one of the lazier justifications for not involving Adrien the show has given us. I mean, here we are, discussing Adrien's situation, who he lives with, how he's lived, his father, the way he looks, his relationship with Natalie. This stranger comes in and just lays the insults on. And he barely says anything. He barely emotes beyond occasionally looking sad while this is going down. But we do get a shot of Natalie's face because this episode's actually super secretly about her. Look, I get it. She is beautiful in this art style. It's kind of distracting. But can we see how Adrien's reacting? But don't worry, there is someone here to portray emotions besides sadness.
O Adrien agora que está sozinho.
Mas o Adrien não tá sozinho.
You know, the thing is, I'm not even mad at Marinette. Honestly, she's doing everything right. It's hardly her fault her boyfriend's been written to have a spine of jelly. It makes sense she'd be indignant the Lord of the Skies insulted Adrien's appearance. I just wonder why he himself had no reaction to having both his appearance and the father he thinks was a hero get belittled. It's one thing for him to not be able to stand up to his dad, and even then they needed to give Gabriel rings that could literally control his son, but I straight up do not believe Adrien would just roll over for these literal strangers because they are nebulously his family, especially the one who's done nothing but insult the people he loves and avoided visiting even after his daughter died. But Marinette needs to shine, so here we are. That's why we see her reaction to Duke Schnoz demanding the hippies relinquish custody and her trying to make sure that doesn't happen while he's under the table, not listening. This episode, predictably, ends with Adrien choosing to stay with Natalie, but it's not because he says he wants to. Marinette, the person this episode is super duper secretly about, is the one who reminds him that she's basically his mom, which makes me wonder what the point of the flashbacks was if someone who wasn't in them is the only one who seems to remember what happened. This is so infuriating. Look at him, standing there, like a moron, while his girlfriend talks about how he can't leave with the most irritating grandfather in the universe. Just head empty, nothing going on in there at all. I was holding out hope this entire episode that at the end he would stand up for himself, tell Snooty McBignose to go smurf himself, and say he wants to stay with Natalie. That was the actual bare minimum, and he couldn't even do that. He was like, oh, I don't know what I want because I'm incapable of having a strong opinion if I don't look like a furry gimp. And then Marinette tells Natalie to come in and explains that she's practically Adrien's mom because evidently she's the only one here who is aware of that fact. She continues to be this family's emotional buffer and it's wild. Remember when everyone in their class, which I think I'll start calling Ladybug's Pokédex, was writing about what they wanted to do in future and all he could think of was I love Marinette Dupain-Cheng? If the show's gonna pull the trigger on him finally growing as a person, I'm really hoping it happens soon because as it is, 5 seasons of character development and regressions have brought him to the dizzying heights of Part 1 Sakura. Okay, that's unfair. Sakura was willing to call out Sasuke when it was necessary. You know, there is an episode where Chat Noir meets Marinette's parents which involves Tom getting turned into a werewolf and trapping her in the sky. A lot like this episode. But Were Dad is a season 3 episode, so Marinette and Chat Noir both get to do shit and be characters, and she even pretty much saves herself. Chat Noir's contribution to fighting his grandparents is calling Ladybug and telling her she's gonna be late and then never showing up. I think having the princess surpass the danger and rescue herself is a far better subversion than just switching the genders of the damsel and the hero, but what do I know? Also, Tom was terrifying to look at in this episode. Speaking of the villain, Adrien's grandmother gets akumatized after having to put up with her asshole of a husband and she turns into a villain that turns the arguing grandfathers into werewolf boxers to fight each other over him while he's trapped in the trophy. This episode clearly wants to parallel Were Dad and the werewolf connection is flimsy as hell. Ringmaster had a cool design, but the whole thing is kind of boring. There's no interesting elements like Illustrator and no moral challenges like Sublimation. Ladybug just comes in, wins, and kills Adrien. Okay, let's talk about the rings, because this episode is super triple duper secretly about those things. Adrien's grandfather demands the rings. Of course, he obediently hands it over, and they become an extra factor of suspense for the audience and Marinette, the only one who knows that they give the holder complete control over Adrien. Rings that immediately get lost, which throws the whole dinner into chaos as Adrien's grandfather starts arguing, which is what led to Millie getting akumatized. In case you were wondering, during all of this, Adrien was under the table looking for Plague. The image of everyone running off with the rings that allow people to control him while he's cluelessly stuck under the table arguing with his undergrown cat says more than 1,000 words could. Fortunately, the script is over 2,000 words. It's insane that he just hands the rings over without comment and then doesn't even ask for them back. His grandmother just decides to give them back to him. Anyway, Marinette breaks the ring to deakumatize the grandmother. I thought for sure she wouldn't risk doing so because that usually doesn't bode well for the sentient beings. I was under the impression she'd be forced to exercise diplomacy and convince the grandmother to revoke the akuma like she did with Kagami. You know, something interesting. Play off Lila's whole with your permission thing. Wait, why didn't Lila use the anti-kuma? Is it because she'd have won? Instead, the amok just doesn't come out of the rings, so Adrien's okay. Okay, this has to mean something. Surely this is too blatant to just be bad writing. Those rings have to have been fake for an amok to not come out. So, was Adrien willing to hand over the memento from his father to the man actively insulting him because it was fake, or did someone else switch them out? Or is this some sort of logic where it doesn't count because they were broken while together and the amok was placed in them separately, a la Crocodile? It's still crazy that Marinette gambled killing her boyfriend to pull this off. And it was completely out of character because Marinette Dupain-Cheng would overthink this 1,000 times worse than I have. You have Argos' number, why don't you call him? It's his family. We get to see Ladybug's transformation in the new animation. 2 words, slow and stiff. You know, in the face of everything else, the Adrien flashbacks aren't that bad. They don't really tell us anything we don't already know and mostly exist so we can see the dynamic Adrien had with his family when he was younger. Does it improve the episode? No. You could take it out and nothing changes, it's completely wasted. The episode opens with Adrien's mom basically going, "My parents don't love me enough to be in my life," which he immediately connects to Gabriel's behavior, and this has no payoff because he never condemns the Earl of Mustaches for it. This is why despite seeing all of this, I hesitate to say Adrien Agreste gets to be a character in this episode too. These flashbacks are just here for vibes, not to inform what he does because he does nothing without someone else telling him to do it first and puts up no resistance when told what to do. At best, it just tells us he hasn't changed. I fully believe that if Marinette had told him to come live in her bedroom, he'd have actually said yes. And considering how much it shows about Gabe's behavior, I can only conclude it should have been in season 5. As it is, it just retroactively gives us information on the conflict that's already over. We should have seen this flashback during Safari. Also, what is it with Miraculous and redeeming the shitty rich father figures in the most half-hearted ways humanly possible? Is the Lord of the Giants apparently liking fries supposed to negate everything else about him? And really, I don't think anything further emphasizes my biggest disappointment in this episode than the final image, where we get to see everyone get together to have fries and the realization hits you. Adrien didn't do anything with his grandparents. He didn't get to know them or form a relationship with them. He greeted them and then barely said anything while they argued with each other before letting his girlfriend do the talking for him. They formed relationships with each other. Despite the vast differences and the fact Gabriel's parents are objectively better, they may as well have been the same people for how much it mattered to him. Meanwhile, Adrien's just sitting at a table with Natalie and Marinette, and I guarantee he's still not saying anything of value because why start now? And by the end of it, the only character in the whole episode who I'm satisfied with is the gorilla, because this episode was super triple duper pinky promise not to tell anyone about it, secretly about him. In case you're somehow still wondering, no, it wasn't good. It's the worst episode so far. Shout out to my patrons, A, Skyman, and Theo Gales. Tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and while you're down there, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more content, or check out my previous reviews. Thank you, and good day.